Amen. It's good to be here this morning. And that was Randy Travis, A Point of Light. I really love the words to that song. I've listened to it for years, and I just thought about it this morning because I like the part where he said, there's nothing that can take over the darkness, the vastness, until it reaches a point of light. And that's what we are. We are taking over the darkness, and we are a point of light. I'll bring this up for us here, and I'll give it to Brother Allen. He is with us. He has finished up his winter or his summer sabbatical, I guess is what you call it. 3 jobs at one time. And so he gets to be with us this morning. That's great. To be here this.
And my bodyguard's with me.
Yes, Sister Aubrey's with him today. So that's great too. And Brother Daniel is working. He had taken on a job, a house and painting it, and it's getting down close to bad weather, and he can finish it up in about 5 or 6 days if he has good weather. So be in prayer for that Daniel gets the weather he needs to finish that house. And I told him just to go there and paint today and not be here and not worry about it. I know a lot of people have a lot of different feelings about that, but for me, I care about the person and their needs, and that's caring for Christ. Sitting here is good, but when you have obligations, you need to get them done. So it's good to be back this morning, and I'm going to discuss the healing waters of life. If you go back probably 4 of our sessions back and listen through, you can catch a strand of where I was traveling this way into where the angelic age is all about the healing waters. We took St. John 5, the healing waters. We took Jonah, looked at how those waters were his healing and brought him out of the fish and sent him with a message. So we have so many different ways that it's expressed in the scripture. I was thinking about Daniel, where Daniel, he was in Babylon, and of course he was looking out across the Great Sea. There's several places where he talks about when he has these visions, he's always looking across the Great Sea, which the Great Sea to them was the Mediterranean. And so I looked up the word Mediterranean, and it says that it is all of the people, the Mediterranean. The word Mediterranean means all of the people bordered around that sea. So it's all the population bordered around that sea. And I thought, well, that's kind of neat that they picked a name that would just cover everyone. And I thought, well, that's kind of like us. You know, we say that everyone is a part of us. But so I wanted to talk on the healing waters of life today. And I know that some people, they say, well, as long as you pray in the name of Jesus, as long as you do all that you do in the name of Jesus, as long as you be a Christian, healing is available to you. Like you go somewhere and pick it out off of a store and on a shelf or something and say, oh, I need that today. It's, please, Jesus, give me that. And no one thinks of the healing power as being inward, inside us. And when we turn inward and begin to move out of the spiritual side, then that's what brings healing. And it's the same way with everything. If you take on stress, it's going to bring on dis-ease. You're not going to be at ease. And when you're not at ease, all kinds of things vibrations, frequencies, what I call things, vibrations, you tap into all kinds of them. And I think I said it in one place. I said God and Satan and heaven and hell, they're not entities and they're not geographical places. They are frequencies and vibrations. And you can enter either one. There's thousands of them, just take your pick. And you have the crystal built into you to enter into that. So I was moving toward healing waters. And, I said to a brother just the other day, he said, I notice when you talk or when you write on Facebook, when somebody asks for prayer, you say, I'm sending you my energy of healing in Christ Jesus. And I said, yes. And they said, it kind of makes it sound like you're the one healing them. And I said, no, the energy's healing them in Christ. And I'm just one of those that has that energy. And he said, well, he said, as long as you're a Christian, this is a brother that's in a testament behind us. He said, as long as you're a Christian and as long as you do all you can do in the name of Jesus, isn't that all that matters? And I said, sounds like that's all that matters to you, and that's fine with me if that's the route you want to take. But for me, I never ever read anywhere in the Bible where Jesus prayed in Jesus' name.
No.
I don't think he ever did. I never read anywhere in the Bible where Jesus said he was a Christian. These are all things that we tack on. Paul tacked some of them on. Other prophets tacked some of them on. I mean, there were prophets that thought airplanes were eagles. There were prophets that, I could just go on and on and on. There was just all kinds of them that said it was one thing when it was another. There was a prophet that said Jesus was going to set his feet on the Mount of Olives. Then there was a prophet that said that prophecy in Zechariah 9 was for this day in 1963, and it was Sunset Mountain, and Jesus set his feet there. So, but the prophet Zechariah looked, and he thought it was the Mount of Olives. But no, it was Sunset Mountain. Jesus Christ came back to earth and set his feet on it. Or he came with another message. So, many times you read things and you think, okay, we got to do it that way. That's the way we got to do it. And all of a sudden you make it into a doctrine. Like one fella, he said, if you don't believe in God and you don't believe in prayer and in Jesus' name, just don't even write me and don't even talk to me and confuse the matter. Just count me out. And so I just wrote back and said, well, I'll just draw a bigger circle and count you back in. Because if you want to go that route, go that route. We're not brothers. One fellow one time, he said, well, I'm not afraid of you anymore, Brother Parnell. We don't believe in what you teach anymore. And I said, well, that's wonderful. Who in the world ever taught you to be afraid of me? I said, I'm kind of shocked that you would say that. What made you afraid of me? Well, it's the prophecies and the things that you said that came to pass. I said, well, you're not fearing me then. You're fearing the Lord. The Lord brought it to pass. So I love them all. And this is where I was headed for weeks. And I know that some people, based on some conversations that just happened in the last couple of days, they're going to feel like I am targeting them. I was headed here for weeks on the waters, the angels, the covenants, all of those things. And I'm not going to let some little conversation veer me away from what I have been moving towards and talking about for weeks at a time. So, the healing waters of life. This is the Aquarian age, the mind age. This is Sister Puri Grejo. I wanted to put this right up front because I love what she said. This is the Aquarian age, the mind age, where there is no moving parts. So how will it vibrate without a moving part? It vibrates through stimulation. I was going to ask you for one of those. Thank you. My nose is running for some reason this morning. Probably because of the coffee. This is the Aquarian age, the mind age, where there is no moving parts. So how will it vibrate without a moving part? It vibrates through stimulation. I like that. The wine is in the scriptures a sign of stimulation, and wine is revelation. It vibrates through stimulation, through the stirring of your thoughts and ideas, through stimulation of revelation, through the stirring of what you understand, what you learned, what you discover. The vibration should be in the presence of the present. So it should be a present happening. For only in the present can you have the gift of life. And that's true. You're not operating the gift of life if you're not in the present. And in the present just means if you're not in tune, if you're not attuned to what Christ is doing in this day, then you still need to be brought to an awareness. So I wrote this down, and we've been talking about the healing waters, about the sea, how it took Jonah in, healed him in his process, put him back out, and he went with a message. And he had some of his old feelings tacked onto that message, judgment and everything else. And when the Holy Spirit did what it planned on doing the entire time, it made Jonah a little bit upset. So we have, when we come out of one age into another, we're going to kind of carry little things along that just need to die along the way. So in 1 Chronicles, we talked about the seas, and I told you there was 3 or 4 seas, and Daniel saw beasts rising up out of the sea, the great sea of the Mediterranean, rising up out of all the peoples, because the Mediterranean meant all the peoples bordering that great sea. So he's seen these beasts rising up out of the people. And we know that in the scriptures, I think there were like 3 or 4 different seas that it talks about symbolically. You have the Mediterranean, then you have the Sea of Galilee, and then you have the Dead Sea, which many times in the scriptures is called the Salt Sea. And you have those seas which lay in Israel, and Jordan actually passes through those seas, traveling from north to south. And so the Mediterranean is the farthest east sea, and then you get Galilee, which is kind of northern central sea, and then you get the Dead Sea, which is as far south as you can go in Israel. And the Jordan flows from north to south and ends in the Dead Sea. The reason they call it the Dead Sea or the Salt Sea, nothing can grow in it. And the reason why is because there's too much salt. It's not like an ocean. The ocean has some salt in it, but still algae and a lot of things can grow in the ocean, and a lot of animals, fish, can live in the ocean, but not the Dead Sea. It's too much salt, and nothing grows there. But what they can do, and they do it often, is they can take from the Dead Sea and take that salt somewhere else and use it, and it just enriches everything. But there's too much in the Dead Sea. Well, that's what happens, when when you try to carry everything with you from the beginning to the end in the Jordan River, it all ends up in the Dead Sea and nothing will live off of it. You've got to lay things down and in order for things to live. And so I wanted to talk on this, and Sister Puri said it right. Now, there are some symbolic seas. 1 Chronicles 18:8, it says that from Tibbath and from Chun, cities of Hadarezer, brought David very much brass. So David had some battles, if you go back and read about what was going on between him and Hadarezer. He had several battles, and he defeated them, and he went in there and he took all kinds of brass, took the brass from everything and brought it into Israel. And David brought very much brass, wherewith Solomon made the brazen sea and the pillars and the vessels of brass. So in the temple, we had this brazen sea. Now, if you go back, and remember, sea is people, if you go back and you look at brass, do you remember what brass represents? I'm sure many of you do. Some of you probably don't. Brass represents judgment. You remember the scripture said Elijah shut up the heavens for 3.5 years, and the heavens became as brass. And in the temple, the very first thing that you see when you entered into the temple, there is this brazen sea that it says Solomon made. It ain't talking about a big sea out here that Solomon took bulldozers and dug out the ground and made a big sea. It's talking about a little brazen, it's like a bowl, and it's made out of brass. And you go in there, and before you do anything else, that brass or that judgment is laying there. And you, as a person, when you walk into the temple, you lay down everything that is inside you, that everything that you feel needed to be judged. You take the waters in the brass sea, you wash your face and hands and feet, and you're clean. And then you walk on into the temple to go to the other things that need to be done in the temple. So this sea of brass is a sea of judgment, not to destroy, not to kill, not to do any of those things, but it's a sea of brass or a sea of judgment which cleanses you so that you can move in the presence and in the awareness of the Lord in your temple. So we see that sea of brass, and it's in the temple. And then we read in Revelations 4 and 6, and it says, and before the throne there was a sea of glass. So glass meaning something that you can see through. You read other places in the scripture, it talks about transparent gold, transparent glass. So we have these, and they're before the throne. So now we have the brazen sea, which was before the throne, before the mercy seat, which was the throne at that time. And you had the brazen sea, and then you had the sea of glass, and these were before the throne. You wash your face, your hands, your feet, and you become transparent as glass. Same sea, it just moves forward in its walk, in its understanding, in its knowledge, in everything. So it says there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, which we have talked about crystals. You can see crystals and hold them in your hand and look at them, and a lot of different people that study the earth and anthropologists and on and on and on, and they say these crystals do certain things for you, and if you hold certain colors of crystals and things like that, it can do this and that and the other. Well, there is, they understand there is in the earth there are just literal hundreds of thousands of millions of crystals that form out of the earth, and these crystals, when the sunlight hits them, What you don't hear it with your ear, this little ear you have, you don't hear it. But they're singing a song. The crystals, if you pay attention and watch a musician set those crystals up, and he sends light through them, and you can hear those crystals playing a song when he touches a ting to it or whatever, it'll play a beautiful song. So these crystals, before the throne, there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, and in the midst of the throne and round about the throne were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind. So we know the throne is the heart of humanity. And in the heart of humanity, there's a song playing. And the song, crystals change in the earth based on the atmosphere, what's happening in the orbits of the heavens and everything else. Crystals will change in the earth, and the song will change. The way that they were playing a song of justification in Luther's day, sanctification in Wesley's day, and restoration of gifts in Pentecost, and a full word in William Branham, and the opening of the seals. Crystals, as we come through life and the orbits change and the message change, the crystals change for us to sing a new song. And that's what we're doing now. And many people, they don't like the song we sing, and that's okay. I love it. I enjoy it. It's a beautiful song. So these sea of brass and sea of crystal. And then in Revelations 15:2, he says, I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire. Now we know that brass is judgment, and fire is a type of judgment. But when you take a sea of glass, or you take the Pisces age, which is water, and then you mingle it with fire, when you mingle water and fire together, and that fire is so hot, I've seen it happen in steel factories, and you drop a piece of steel accidentally into the great vat of water, which normally cools it with a steam, and you drop that in there, it'll explode. Fire explodes water at higher than boiling temperatures when it hits it. So I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire. So we was moving from the Piscean water age into the Aquarian age in 15:2, because the temple was going to be open. The 7 messengers were finishing their message. It was finishing up, done and over. And he says, and I saw this sea of glass mingle with fire. So it had to be an explosion. And where does an explosion take the water? It changes it completely, turns it into vapor, and takes it into the air. And so you move from water into the fire and into the air where we are presently now. And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast. So now there's this sea of people, and they're not just a sea of crystal and just a sea of glass, just a sea of brass. They are a people who were mingled with fire, and when they mingled themselves with fire, something changed. And what changed was now they have victory over the beast. The beast being the image, the flesh, all of those things. The beast is a symbolic power of sort, and they have gotten the victory over the beast, over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, and they stand on the sea of glass having the harps of God. And it says, and they sang a new song. So the song was when the Pisces was ending and the fire struck that water and changed it from a sea of glass mingled with fire, and then we moved out into those seals, and it opened up a whole new life for the word, for the message, for the people. And these people came out of that mixture into the air, into the rapture, if you want to call it that, and into the air. And when they came out, they had victory over themselves, over the navel. You know, you had, I've got it in here, we're going to talk about it, but you have you actually have, Jesus talked in St. John 8 about, he looked at the Pharisees and he said, you're of your father the devil. He said, I am of my father are one. But you're of your father. Made it sound like they had two different fathers. Well, we know we know there's only one Father. But what Jesus was talking about is in your birth, you have what looks to be two fathers in duality. And one of them, science has said it, one of them is your navel, which feeds you from the earth. So you have an earthly father. And while you're laying in the womb, you're being fed with the earth. With anything that mama eats, you're being fed with it. And so we have the father of the navel and the umbilical cord, which feeds you. And then you have a spiritual father, which feeds the mind. And these two are two different fathers, so to speak. It's one father, but in two different ways. And Jesus was saying, you've never come to your awareness. You've never come to your awareness of who I am and who you are. And you're of your father, the devil. You're still of the navel processes. You're still in the umbilical cord, spiritually speaking. You haven't ever come out of that feeding of you're of the earth. You're earthy. You're first man, Adam. And then Jesus said, but I am of my Father. Whatsoever my Father does, I do hitherto. And he gives them that speech of, I am a spiritual man. And I have come to the understanding of one Father. And you're still in the actions of that Father that was feeding you in the earth. And I'm of the actions of that Father that's feeding me of the spirit and earth. That which is born to flesh is flesh, Jesus said it. And that which is born to spirit is spirit. And you say, one person wrote me, as soon as I put that email out, a person wrote me, or that post, and he said, he was talking about my discussion about the navel and how that is a feeding from the earth, and it gives you an earthly character, an earthly person, an earthly father, so to speak, that you raise up in, and then you come to your spiritual father. And he said, there's no place in the scripture that even talks about such a thing as being fed from the navel. And I said, you don't understand your scripture. I felt like Jesus in Matthew 22. You do err, not knowing your scripture. St. John 7, Jesus said, he that thirsts, let him come unto me and drink. And out of his belly, just look the word belly up, his navel, that's what they're talking about. Out of your belly shall flow rivers of living water. And so Jesus was saying, when you come to your spiritual father, your natural and your spiritual father become one. You're being fed in the earth, and it is your spiritual father feeding you through the belly, and out of your belly, out of your navel, shall come waters of life. And then it talks another place about the navel in the Old Testament. We'll not go back there, but because I've got a lot to say. But we sing this new song, and we take what looked like Jesus was saying two fathers, and we bring them together as one. When we step into the spiritual understanding, both your belly and your mind will feed you with living water. So we see it, and they sung the new song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty, just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints. So they changed. When they came over into the Aquarian age, into the opening of the seals, into the age that we're presently in, they had gotten the victory over the beast, over the image, over his mark, over his number, and over his name. And they're standing on a sea of glass, having harps, the song of the crystals, and the crystals have to do with the orbits and everything. The songs of the crystals were changing. You and I we build crystals in us to enter frequencies and vibrations all the time. So we come to Revelations 18 and verse 21, and he says, "And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone." Now we know where Babylon was smitten. Daniel, the 2nd chapter, it says there was a great stone that was cut out of the mountain, and it smote the feet of the great image. And when it smote the feet, it broke it into pieces and made it into powder. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea. Sea is people. Saying, "Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all." So there was going to be such a change. One day there was going to come an angelic power with such a change in the earth that it would completely destroy and break down the old systems and take us into new systems. And it was an angel that took a great stone, the stone cut out of the mountain, cast it into the sea, into the people, and began to change everything about the people. And it said that the great city Babylon would be thrown down and shall be found no more at all. And that's what's happening right now. We're watching that happen as Babylon, not some city over there in wherever, Syria, but we're talking about a symbolic thing that's going on in the people and is real. But when John writes about it, he writes it in symbolic form. And Daniel speaks the same thing in the 7th chapter. "I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heavens strove upon the sea." And we know who controls the 4 winds of the heaven. We know in Revelation 7 it was winds of war. The 4 winds begin to move. And we know in Daniel 7, these 4 winds, they're 4 angels. And we know who those angels are. They're symbolic in power. And it's Michael and Gabriel and Wormwood and Lucifer. And they are archangels and cherubims and seraphims. And it's all symbolic natures that are going on earth. And we find out that I saw in this vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds, or the 4 angels, the 4 characters of heaven, strove upon the great sea. The Mediterranean meaning all peoples. These angels, these powers, strove upon the great sea, or began to move over the great sea the same way the Spirit moved over them in the book of Genesis and created those bodies, is the same way the Spirit is now moving and stroving upon the sea, and is changing everything. And he says 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. And he talks about those 4 beasts, and he brings them in, and it's the image that has come all the way down through time that humanity builds and tries to live off of, because they don't know how to break into the crystals and live off of the life for the reality in the day of their age. So we come to this time. Now Ezekiel, we're talking about seas, and we're talking about people, and we're talking about how that this sea of brass and glass and crystal and the great sea, the Mediterranean, all of these seas that are going on around us symbolically, all over us, all over the world. Ezekiel's seen something that happened. There was a temple. If you go back and read it in Ezekiel 44, 5, 6, you see Ezekiel building a temple, talking about this temple. And so you see that. You see it happening, and then afterwards, this angel who was showing Ezekiel all of the temple, all of the east, the north, the south, and the west, and showing him everything that was going on, Ezekiel 47, he says, afterwards, after I seen all these things, and the angel had taken me all through the temple, and I knew the temple inside and out, which is what you and I have done. And we've come to a point in Revelations 15 to where now the temple is complete and it's open, and smoke is rising out of the temple in Revelations 15, smoke meaning rapture or change. And that's what's going on. So Ezekiel seen it, and he said, afterwards he brought me again unto the door of the house, and behold, waters issued out from under the threshold of the house eastward. So waters was coming out of the threshold of the house and traveling eastward. For the forefront of the house stood toward the east, and the waters came down from the right side of the house at the south side of the altar. So we're all the way into the south side, whether you know it or not. The south winds are what is blowing, and we've come from the east to the west in the gospel, and we've come through the north, which is the wars, and that was the traveling all the way across the church ages in the north, and then the Spirit comes back and travels back east in the south. So we're in the south. And Ezekiel says, I was watching, and there was a great water that began to flow from the south gate back east. So that finishes the church ages, brings us all the way west as far as we can go, and then the observatories watched it happen. They took pictures of it, and the Spirit of the Lord moved into the south and began to move back all the way back east again. Then brought he me out of the way of the gate northward, and led me about the way without unto the utter gate by the way that looketh eastward. And behold, there ran out waters on the right side. So Ezekiel began to, which is you and I, anytime you're reading about these prophets, it's you. Always remember that. Whatever you read about in the Bible, apply it to you. Wherever it's at. Whether it's a devil, whether it's a woman, whether it's a man, whether it's a spirit, whether it's a temple, whether it's a nation, apply it to you. And ask yourself, how does these things live in me? And you'll be able to conquer. You'll be able to bring to oneness. You'll be able to come to friendship. You'll be able to do all those things within yourself. So he said, he brought me eastward. I took a good look at everything. Water's running out the right side. I'm looking at north, south, east, and west. I'm looking at the whole picture. And he says, and when the man that had the line in his hand went forth eastward, he measured 1,000 cubits, and he brought me through the waters. So these waters flowing from the south and filling the temple. He said he brought me through the waters, and the waters were to the ankles. And you know all the songs and things about to the ankles and into the knee, and then on and on and on. But he says the waters were to the ankles. And again he measured 1,000 and brought me through the waters, and the waters were to the knees. We're going to pay attention to what these waters do, because waters are people. And he says, and he measured 1,000 and brought me through the waters, and the waters were to the knees. And again he measured 1,000, brought me through the waters, which were to the loins. So each time that there was a change, the waters were filling up the temple more and more and more all the time. And he brought me through the waters to the loins. And afterwards he measured 1,000, and it was a river. And I like that each time he measured 1,000. Each time a new message comes, it's a millennial reign. And then when another message comes and he measures again, it's another millennial reign. Millennial reign doesn't mean 1,000. It means a reign of rest. A message comes people can rest in. Until another message comes that people can rest in. Until another message comes that people can rest in. So that's these millennial reigns that are happening. And afterwards he measured 1,000, and it was a river that I could not pass over. It finally come to a point that the sea, the river, had changed into not just a river flowing and getting deeper and deeper and deeper, but it came to a point to where it changed into a sea, a massive multitude of water. And he says 1,000, and it was a river that I could not pass over, For the waters were risen, waters to swim in, a river that could not be passed over. So, in the South, in the zodiac, in the Aquarius, you know that the Aquarian water bearer is pouring out spiritual waters into the earth, just exactly what Ezekiel's talking of. And as he pours it out, there are fish that are southern fish, and they're upside down in the water. And as he pours those fish out, or as he pours those waters out, those waters are waters of life. And it brings the fish to life. And they begin to live in the waters, which they could not live before they were dead. Or it's a group of people who stepped out of one age into another age. They came from the theophany and came here. They came from the old age and came here. They came from all different ways, all different peoples. They were Mediterranean people. And again, he talks about these waters, for the waters were waters to swim in a river that could not be passed over. And he said unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen this? Then he brought me to return to the brink of the river. So Ezekiel's looking at this massive river, so large he couldn't pass over it, and so deep you couldn't walk through it, and it was something to swim in. And now when I had returned, behold, at the bank of the river there were very many trees on the one side and on the other. Then said he unto me, These waters issue out toward the east country and go down into the desert and go into a great sea, which being brought forth into the sea, the waters shall be healed. So notice that. Listen to me. It was a place of rest in Luther's day. But there were greater things to come. And it was a place of rest in Wesley's day, but there were greater things to come. It was a place of rest in every single one of the prophets' messages, but there was greater to come. And so he watched until these waters, which was a river, flowed out into a great sea, a multitude of multitudes of people that were in these depths of understanding. That's what the ankles justification, the knees sanctification, the loins restoration of gifts, then water that you couldn't pass over, that you had to swim through. It was over your head, and it was massive waters, opening of those seals. And then that brought us to a great mass of people, an Aquarian group that was going to be waters that, he says, and it shall come to pass that everything that liveth, that's a lot of things. Think about it. Everything that liveth, which moveth, whether it's a bug, whether it's a dog, whether it's a cat, whether it's a tree, all these things that we see moving with the wind, moving in every way, everything that lives and moves, whithersoever the rivers shall come, it shall live. So these rivers were not a natural river, and these seas were not a natural sea. It was spiritual waters, symbolic waters, waters of the Spirit, that when it touched something in this great age that we're in now, this Aquarian age, when the waters of life touch something, it lives. It can't die. It comes to life. You remember the little fish? Let's watch. These rivers shall come and shall live, and there shall be a very great multitude of fish, because these waters shall come thither, for they shall be healed, and everything shall live whither the river cometh. Wherever this sea touches, wherever this river goes, whatever it touches, it shall live, and there shall be a multitude of fishes. Now you know that, I already said it, the fish were laying dead. But when those spiritual waters strike those fish in the south, and when it strikes those fish, it brings them to life. And that's what's happening now all over the world. It's not just in the south, but it's those southern waters, that symbolic water flowing out of the temple in a day that you can't walk in it. It's over your head. All you can do is swim. It's touching everything, and it's bringing the little fishes, just like William Branham when he stood up and he looked at that little fish that had the guts pulled out of it, and he looked at it and said, "Little fishy, I give you back your life." Bang, it took off, and his guts were floating around in the water. So we can see that this is the age. That was a symbolic form, that little symbol of William Branham, and that fish was a symbol of what was going on in a great big picture, fishies coming to life in this southern age, or in this age where the southern winds are blowing through the garden. And you know what Solomon said, when the southern winds blow through the garden, he said it brings out a fragrance, a sweet fragrance, and a healing fragrance. That's what's going on. We are entered into the healing waters. And these waters, it shall come to pass that the fishes shall stand upon it. Fishes are going to stand up. I think maybe he's talking about people. And it shall come to pass that fishers shall stand upon it from Engedi even unto Englaim. They shall be a place to spread forth their nets. Their fish shall be according to their kinds, every seed to its own kind. And as the fish of the great sea, exceeding many. So we bring forth fish of our kind. I'm not bringing forth Pisces fish anymore. You know, there was two fish, and their tails were attached together by a couple of gold rings, and there was a battle all the time between vertical and horizontal, all the time. And so I'm not bringing forth those kind of fishies today. Those are over with. We're bringing forth fish that can swim, that have been set free, that are not in any kind of attachment. And he says, these fish, there should be fish according to their kinds. I am bringing forth Aquarian fish. That's what my message, that's what my life, that's what my character and everything else is about. And that's the same for you. When I talk about me, I said it a zillion times, you should be saying me too. It is you. Everything that I'm saying is you. I apply it to me because I'm the one that I can look at it in a reality, apply it to my life, and become one of those fishies that's swimming and becoming an Aquarian spirit and an Aquarian way. And I can only do that for me. I can talk about how it did it for me and hopefully open up a door in your heart to where what you have in you can do for you what you need in this age. So we see this. Now, he said the fish was of the great sea exceeding many, but the miry places thereof and the marishes thereof shall not be healed. Or those places where you still got those Taurus, and I'm talking about symbolic. I'm not talking bad about people that are Taurus. I'm talking symbols. You've got those Taurus fish that came up in the age from Adam to Noah, and some people go back there and try to live that. And you got the Aries fish from Noah to Jesus, and some people try to go back there and live that and follow Moses and do this and that and the other. And then you got from Jesus to the end of the church ages, and some people try to live that, and they still want messengers. They're still waiting on another messenger. They're waiting on another man to show up. They're waiting on all kinds of things. I'm not dealing with any of those fishes. I don't bring forth Taurus, Aries, or Pisces. I am bringing forth with my waters that I am pouring out Aquarian fish. There's no need of any other fish. But it says these marshes and these places where that it's miry, they're not healed. That's why many people are not healed. And they still have these traditions and regulations and laws and forms and ways of life. You got to say it this way or else. You got to act this way or else. You got to walk this way or else. We're not there. That's miry places. We're set free. The bands of Pisces have been broken, and the fish are free. And by the river upon the bank thereof, on this side and on that side, shall grow all the trees. Listen, shall grow all the trees for meat. So, whose leaf shall not fade, neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. In other words, you pick an apple for me, I'm going to grow some more. You pick a peach for me, I'm going to grow some more. You pick a pear for me, I'm going to grow some more. Pomegranate, I'm going to grow some. I'm never consumed to where I have no more fruit. That's the way with this Aquarian age. There is a tree of life, and it had 12 seasons and 12 different fruits, and it comes forth all the time. You just pick off of the Aquarian people. We have so much fruit and so much in our season. And here we see, neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. It shall bring forth new fruit according to his months. Because their waters they issued out of the sanctuary, and the fruit thereof shall be for meat. So the waters that we are bringing forth is becoming the meat that's growing up and living in the trees. We know the trees are people. And so you have peoples, and they are actually taking on a form from liquid to solid, and they are living and bringing forth fruit. Because their waters they issued out of the sanctuary, and the fruit thereof shall be for meat, and the leaf thereof for medicine. So we have become, our leaves, our fruits, everything about us has become fruit to eat on, meat to eat on, and medicine. Medicine is for what? Healing. We've come to the healing waters. We are, not the pharma, not tramadol, or not any of these other blood pressure pills and all these other, that's all symbolics of what's really going on in the spiritual. And we have become the fruit, the leaf, and the medicine. If you want healing, you're going to have to pick from the fruit of the day. You're going to have to pick from the tree of the day. You're going to have to pick from the waters of the day. You're going to have to pick in the Aquarian age. You're going to have to reach inside, which is where Aquarian tells you to go. You're going to have to reach inside and get the medicine that you need, the attribute that you need to heal what you have and get out of your disease. And he goes on, thus saith the Lord God, this shall be the border. This shall be the day whereby ye shall inherit the land according to the 12 tribes of Israel, according to the 12 fruits. And then he says something special. And Joseph shall have 2 portions, or a double portion. And I really like that because we know this is the age of Joseph. This is the age where that Joseph comes to his double portion. So we see all of these seas, and we see what these seas and rivers are people, and they're bringing forth trees and fruit, and they're bringing forth water for the season, and they're changing everything into trees and leaves and fruit, and it's medicine for the healing waters. Where do you go to get your medicine today? Well, I go down to the pharmacy. Well, if that's the medicine you want, go ahead. And I'm not speaking against pharmacy. If I have a cold, sometimes I take Alka-Seltzer Plus because it helps my head. But that's not the medicine we're talking about here this morning. We're talking about this great day when Aquarius brings the people up to a level of consciousness to where they, you and me, are the medicine that's needed for the healing of the waters. So we see the Dead Sea where nothing can live, and there is some of that around. We see the Mediterranean Sea, which is all the peoples being covered with these great waters, with these great things. And we see the Galilee, a lake in northern Israel, and the Jordan flows through it from north to south and drops down into the Dead Sea and ends there. We see all of these things are symbolics. Jesus walking through the Sea of Galilee, walking on top of the Sea of Galilee, walking on the water. We see all of these great things. Now, and we have taken this sea of water, this people, and we've moved them from brass to glass to crystal, and we've moved them into transparent gold, and we've made ourselves, it's just a progression of who we are, and we've taken this sea and we brought it to a point that now it's completed. The temple is open, and the sea is flowing out into the age that we're in. And it's an angelic age. Matthew 22, Hebrews 2. I could just go on and on with the scriptures that show you how that we have moved into an angelic age. Brother Edwin, a Roman, made this statement. I like it. He said, we need to understand that first, we're not talking about us turning into angels. And we are not. I said that before. We're not talking about us turning into angels, like angels are flying around out here for 6,000 years, but now they're going to embed themselves into us. And like Genesis, they said it was angels that came down and impressed themselves into man in the days of Noah, and then married the women and brought forth these giants and everything else. We're not talking about that. I don't care if you're a midget or you're 8 foot tall. The angelic power is upon you. It is in you. It's an attribute that comes out of you, and you just need to know how to reach inside and make it work for you. For yourself. Don't walk around saying Don Parnell's angel works for me. No, that doesn't do it. People are going to laugh at you. I used to ask people on Facebook many times, please, stop calling me a prophet. 2 reasons. Number one, we're way beyond prophets now. The prophet's in us. But number 2, it throws a stumbling block out into the public. Because when they hear the message, they immediately say, oh yeah, that's those Parnellites. That's those Parnell followers. You don't have to mention me. Don't worry about me. You know inside you lays the attributes that I'm talking about, and it's up to you to bring those attributes out and begin to swim in this water and come up to a level of consciousness that you understand yourself. Jesus said, who do you say that I am? And Peter said, some say that you're John the Baptist back from the dead. Some say that you're Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He said, okay, but who do you say that I am? And Peter said, you're the Christ. You're the Son of God. Now that was really great. Jesus even said to him, Peter, flesh and blood you didn't get this from your navel. Flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you. You're operating your spiritual mind now. You're operating the real Father. That's the Father of both navel and mind. And Jesus says that to him. But see, immediately after that, just go read your scripture. Immediately after he says that in St. John, or in Matthew 16, Jesus then talks about, I'm going to go, the Son of Man is going to be killed, and the Son of Man is going to be crucified. And he gives them that understanding, and Peter immediately says, not so, Lord, never will that happen. I'll fight for you all the way to my death. And Jesus said, Satan, get behind me. So he's got the keys of the kingdom. He's got a revelation that Jesus is the Christ, but he's still talking after the navel, after Satan, after the processes, after the earthly man. And Jesus rebukes and corrects that man and says, get thee behind me, for you don't savor and you don't know the things that be of the Spirit. So what was Peter lacking? I'll ask you that question. What was Peter lacking? If you want to answer it, you can. I'll read it later. But I'll tell you what Peter was lacking. He didn't know who he was. He had come to the point he could see a Christ outside him, but he couldn't see a Christ inside him. Even to the point to where he stood when Christ was on Calvary being crucified. Peter was standing at a fire and cursing and saying, "I don't know the man. I have nothing to do with that man." But then Jesus comes back in another form, and he tells the women, gives the message of the resurrection to the women. The men were too busy fussing over who was going to be in the next power, I guess. Who's going to be the main one now? There's 12 of us, and now there's only 11, and Jesus is gone, and who's going to be in power? And they were fussing over all the power, while the women had enough sense to know that Jesus just couldn't be dead. This couldn't happen. Something else had to happen. So they went to the tomb, they got the message from Jesus, and Jesus said, "Go and tell my disciples and Peter to come meet me at the shore of Galilee." Why did he do that? Why did he specifically pick out Peter? Because Peter he watched him deny him 3 times. And he knew that Peter couldn't feel good. He couldn't feel good about himself. He had to be totally condemned. And Jesus was letting him know, it's all right. It's a part of the process. But Brother Parnell, Judas denied and Peter denied. I read where all of them denied. It said that they scattered like sheep with no shepherd. They ran. They were afraid. They got away from him. And that's okay. He said, but tell Peter to be sure and come. Well, when Peter came and they're walking on the seashore and Jesus is talking about different things, he looks at Peter and he says, "Feed my sheep." Or he said, "Do you love me?" And Peter said, "Yea, Lord, I do. I love you." He said, "Feed my sheep." So he goes on for just a little while and they're talking, and he turns and looks at Peter and said, "Do you love me?" Second time. "Yea, Lord." He said, "Then feed my sheep." So he goes a little while longer, and Jesus looks at him and says, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "Thou knowest, Lord, how much I love you." And then he looks at John. He points at John. He says, "But what about him?" You know what Jesus said to Peter? The same thing I'm going to say to you. You stop worrying about everybody else. What are you going to do? What's in your life? Do you know who you are? Don't worry about what the Spirit tells John to do, or Alan to do, or Don to do. What's the Spirit telling Elizabeth to do? What's the Spirit telling Joe to do? What's the Spirit telling whoever you are? Felix, whoever you are. What's the Spirit telling you to do? Stop worrying about what everybody else is doing. Get into the flow of the Spirit and enjoy it. That's where we're at. Your condemnation is over. I know you love me. I know you have an understanding. That's what Jesus was saying. But you still worry too much about what everybody else is doing. Stop worrying about it. We need to understand that first, we're not talking about us turning into angels, and we're not talking about angels turning into humans. We're not talking about angels coming and pressing themselves into human beings the way different ones taught in Genesis and things like that. That's not what I'm talking about. We are so far beyond that. And that's what I had written. And then Brother Edwin comes back and says, "I will not go back to become an angel, a seraphim, a cherubim, an archangel, a theophany, a Gabriel, Michael, Lucifer, or wormwood. God, I will not become a God, Holy Spirit, devil, Satan, and on and on and on. It's because they are nothing but logic, processes, symbols. Those things are not life. And I agree with him 100%. Brother Branham told us Father, Son, Holy Ghost are just titles. They're not life. They're not entities. They're titles of an entity. So here we see, so the real thing is when all those terms, this is what Edwin's saying, the real thing is when all those terms and attributes become you, become humanity. It's you and I. Then we can call it a real thing. Jesus was so plain spoken that I love it. I'm talking about these healing waters. Listen to where Jesus says healing waters come from. Jesus was so plain spoken that I love it. Every time he spoke of prayer and faith and doubt and unbelief, he let them know that it was coming from them. There wasn't a devil out here, an entity out here that's making you disbelieve. There isn't anything out here that's making you believe. It's not anything outside of you. Jesus was letting them know it comes from them. Their doubt, their unbelief, their belief, their prayer. And it was up to them. I'll read it to you. It's up to them to move mountains and use their faith. Not Jesus' faith. Not William Branham's faith. Not Don Parnell's faith, the Tory's faith, or Allen's faith. But you use your faith. You have faith. It's in you. And Jesus was telling them that it's up to them if they move mountains and use their faith, their mouth, their fasting, and their voice. It all comes from us. I have personally seen more people healed in one gathering, and I have, than most have seen in a lifetime. These people that go around and say, oh, you ought to pray, you ought to ask in the name of Jesus, you ought to do this and that. And I just keep moving about and saying, I have within me, I know who I am the Christ, I am these things, and I have within me something that can open a door to them and heal their body. And when it opens the door to them, it's not me going over there and healing them. It's them opening a door to something within themselves that will heal them. That's what this is about. Jesus says it all comes from us. I have personally seen more people healed in one gathering than most have seen in a lifetime. It's amazing what you can do as Christ when you recognize who you are. Matthew 17:19. Then came the disciples to Jesus apart and said, why could not we cast out this devil? They tried to cast the devil out of a boy, and he threw himself into the water and into the fire, which is what's going on with a lot of people in this age. They're throwing themselves back and forth between the water and the fire. And they're never coming on over into Aquarius, into an air age. And they just flop themselves back and forth through water and fire. Then came the disciples to Jesus and said, why can't we get them out of that? Why can't we get them out of the water and get him out of the fire and heal his body? And Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief. He didn't say it was because of something that you're doing wrong. It's your unbelief. It is depending on old systems and not on life. Come to life. For verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of a mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. Howbeit this kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting. So is you. And how do I get these things out of me? Through prayer, meditation, fasting. You begin to open up doors inside you, inside your human spirit, inside your consciousness, and you keep moving to higher consciousness, and you move out all of those demons, all of those forms and processes that try to keep you in the water and in the fire, and you keep flopping back and forth. Why can't I get them out? Because of your unbelief. Now, Matthew 20 and 21, Jesus answered and said unto them, Verily I say unto you, if ye have faith, and doubt not, ye, you don't call on something else, ye shall not only do this which is done to the fig tree. Jesus looked at a fig tree. They were on their way into town. The fig tree didn't have the figs ripened the way it should be. And Jesus went to pick one off of it, and he didn't like it. And he looked at the tree, and he cursed it. And they walked on. No change, nothing. But then as they walked on, they came back through a few days later, and the tree was dead. And Jesus answered and said unto them, the disciples said, Look, he cursed the tree. It had figs, and now it doesn't. It's dead. And Jesus said, If ye have faith and doubt not, ye shall not only do this which is done to the fig tree, you can do away with all those rules and regulations and traditions that keep you from coming to the age and the fruit that you're supposed to be. You can curse that or remove it or recast it in your life. You can do this, but not only that, ye shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea. It shall be done. It'll obey you. Your mouth, your voice, your desire, your prayer, your attribute. You don't have to stand around yelling, Jesus said, Don said, Tori said, so-and-so said, William Branham said. You don't have to stand around yelling that all the time. Jesus said, I say unto you. It has been said in the days of Moses, but I say unto you. It has been said over here about loving one another, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say unto you. So Jesus was bringing it up to date and saying, I say. Now we say, oh yeah, Jesus could do that, but see, he was a special guy, and you men and women, you ladies, and you can't do that. You can't say, I say. Well, I'm sure that you probably can't, because you don't believe you can. Why can't I do those things like you do? Because of unbelief. Not unbelief in me, unbelief in you. How do I get that out? You begin to raise your consciousness in prayer, in meditation, in fasting, in all those things. You raise your consciousness to an understanding that you are the one that controls these things in your life. Jesus said, all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. It's very simple. Those who have entered the healing powers of Christ with understanding, okay? It's not waters, it's not seas, it's not angels floating around everywhere, it's not angels pressing themselves into people. When you come into these waters, these healing powers of waters in Christ, you come into it with an understanding. And those who have entered the healing powers of Christ with understanding have released it from their inner being. You know, let me just give you a little example. William Branham laying in the ICU in Texas. He laid there, and physically he became weaker and weaker and weaker until he died. But Perry Green wrote a book, and he said he was there the whole time, and he said every person in the ICU was healed. Those healing waters, when they open up in you and somebody gets into that atmosphere, it's going to open up that thing in them. Now, they may do like Saul, and they may leave you and get out from under that anointing of that healing power, which is an atmosphere that's all around you, and they leave, And they go right back to where they were at, hating David, trying to kill this and trying to do that. But for you, that healing attribute, when you come into it with understanding, it is opened. That's why I say I'm sending my energy of healing powers in Christ. I'm sending what I have, this atmosphere that's in me, I'm sending it to you. And I want it to open up for you all those same attributes in you. Those who've entered that. We may meet people, many people, who are outwardly expressing disease, dis-ease. It's all diabetes is. That's all cancer is. That's all, you can just keep naming the diseases. It's dis-ease. Your body starts out, it's not at ease. It's fussing, it's fighting, it's battling within itself, and all of that stress puts you into vibrations of that will bring on you dis-ease. Have you ever watched those studies about water and they put music on? And the water begins to develop, and it develops all kinds of symbols and emblems and everything else. And you put songs of love on it, develops certain emblems, and it's so smooth. And you put on heavy metal, and it's splashing and it's jerking and it's all kinds of. That's what I'm saying. Come into ease. Get out of dis-ease. You are 90%, 87% water. Get into the sounds and the vibrations and the frequencies that put you at ease. That's what this is about. And I'm not just talking about music. Music is a part of it, but also it's your thinking, it's your consciousness, it's your life, it's your way, it's your walk. It's all of these things combined. We find it is our place to hold the form of ease. When we get around people of disease, I remember walking into a hospital. The man's name was Jim, and he was laying there, and they had him packed in ice, Jimmy. They had him totally packed in ice. They had him wrapped in the looked like straitjacket stuff almost, and he was dying, and his brain, everything about him, his head was swollen so big. And I walked into that room, and there was a doctor and a nurse and another brother went in with me. And I said, I'm his pastor, and I'm here to pray for him, and he's going to be healed. And that doctor turned and looked at me, and he said, "You're his pastor?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "What you'd better do is you'd better be preparing for a funeral, because this man ain't coming back." And I said, "Sir, I'm going to pray for him, and I'd rather you leave the room, because he is coming back." And the nurse just got about a half grin on her face like, yeah. So he left, and I prayed for that man. And in 3 days, he was home. Unpacked from the ice, everything gone from his body, back home in good condition, because there was no unbelief. I believed in my consciousness who I was. And I knew that I had to operate that atmosphere and open something up in his body that would heal him. William Branham said that. He said, "I'm not the one operating this gift. You are. It's you. It's your faith. It's who you are. You're operating it. It's not me asking in Jesus' name. It's not me praying to God in prayer, hoping to goodness something miraculous might have. That's not what it's about. It's you. You operate the gift within you. That's what we want to come to, that consciousness. We find it is our place in the midst of dis-ease to hold the form of ease. Just enjoy who you are and hold the form in balance. Looking deeply within the person. Look past their disease. I've done it many times. Someone told me, they said, "Brother Parnell, did you know that that lady in that wheelchair that you hugged had psoriasis?" and you were putting your hands on her and everything else? And I said, yeah, I knew that. What's the problem? They said, well, that can be transmitted. I said, no, it can't. I didn't do it in unbelief, and the lady was healed. And hundreds of people, men that couldn't raise their arm, I walk over, I take their arm, and I pull it up. And he's like, oh. I said, praise the Lord with it now. And the whole time, I can't lift my arm. And I had it all the way up. I said, yes, you can. Believe you can. I let go of it. He started doing it. And he did it ever since. And I've seen hundreds upon hundreds of things like that, because you need to break into that consciousness of ease, look past the disease to the ease. William Branham, he looked at somebody and they're crippled, they're in a wheelchair, and he is going to pray for them, and he looks at her and he sees back into her past, and he says, I see how you came into this wheelchair. You were on a porch, you were a little girl, and you were playing with a dog, and it threw you off balance, and you fell off the porch and broke your hip and messed up your spine, and you're in a wheelchair the rest of your life. And she starts crying and says, yes, that's true. And then what does William Branham do? He looks at the disease, he looks at what happened, then he looks at her in a perfect form. And he comes back and he says, thus saith the Lord, you're healed, get up out of your wheelchair. And she gets up. William Branham, had to get past that look of that woman in that wheelchair and see her as whole. You have the same things happening personally in you. You have many things that you have to get past. You have to work on it. Sometimes it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes your blindness won't go away for a couple of years, or whatever it might be. You know those stories. You know how those things happen. The one man, Jesus prayed for him, and he said, they said, can you see? And he said, I see men like trees walking. And they prayed for him again. And he said, now I've begun to see. So it takes, sometimes it's not a miracle. Sometimes it is a miracle. And you can say, oh my God, it happened right then, right there, right at the time. That's wonderful. But all of it is you opening up your inner attribute. We find it is our place to hold the form of ease and balance, looking deeply within the person, past their dis-ease, and find the perfection of that person. Look into where they are perfect. The place of purity inside that person that is ever holy. There is inside every person, he's a murderer, he's a this, he's a that. Inside there, deep down inside, all of that nasty cover is there, yes. And it makes me sick when I see it on people sometimes. But I always do my best to look past that and look at them in a perfect and holy way and seek prayer. I've had men come to me who have been pedophiles, who have been molesters, who have been incest, and had it done to them and done it to others. And while I'm sitting there talking to them, some of the things they tell me I almost just want to throw up. But I know that if I enter into that disease, they're never going to be healed. So I look at them in a perfect manner, in a perfect way, and I say, you're better than that. That doesn't have to ever happen to you again. You can get out of that. You can remove that condemnation, and you can remove that desire. You can remove all those things from your life. But it has to happen in you. You have to want to. If I can't get you to desire what I'm talking about, there's not a lot I can do for you. And I have seen many, many men healed of those things, because you have to hold a form of ease in order to help them in their dis-ease. We keep no room in us for the disease to present itself as permanent. I don't accept it as permanent. I believe the person has something in them to heal them. And we speak simply from within, through the lips. Paul said that in the book of Romans, speak through the lips for the disease to remove itself from the person. And when you do that, you are the waters. Ezekiel 47, you are the healing waters. And you are the river which brings forth the tree of life with all of its fruit. And you are the one that brings all these things forth, and you're the one that opens the door for everybody else to enter it in their life. You do that. Your atmosphere around you. Our healing vibration in Christ takes control of our atmosphere. I've watched it work thousands and thousands of times. Sometimes it takes time. Other times it's a miracle. I'm always happy for a miracle, but I'm never dissatisfied. I'm never unhappy because there wasn't a miracle. Because I know in my heart, I opened the door. I gave them the feeling and the understanding of the attribute. I told them it's inside them, and they can open it. I done everything I could do. And it might heal. It might take 2 or 3 days. It might take a month. It might take a year. It might take 10 years. But I believe that at some point, that person, every person that I've ever prayed for, that I've ever talked to, that I've ever brought to this understanding, I believe at some point it'll break open in them what they need to be themselves and who they are. I find it to be a simple choice to attune to the flow of life. It's simple. And we then stream to oneness. Just tune into the flow of life within you. You know when that flow of life is saying, don't make that turn. Don't take that path. Take this path. You know this path is and you listen to that flow in you all the time. It's a simple choice to attune to the flow of life. And we then stream into oneness. Once you attune to the flow, you move into the river. You move into the sea. You move into the healing waters. You attune to the flow of life, and we then stream into oneness without connection troubles. We've connected up. We're one. We're in a great multitude of people who are one together. Let's recognize that attunement, which attunement just means tuning to a harmonious life, like you would tune a guitar, or you would tune a piano, or whatever you might do. You attune it so that it puts forth beautiful music from someone that knows how to play it. A lot of people haven't learned how to play this guitar. They haven't learned how to play this piano I'm talking about. But you can. You can and you will if you will open up that heart to do what needs to be done. Let's recognize that attunement, tuning to a harmonious life, is a holistic process of change. And each of us brings peace to our world by attuning and enjoying the harmonious life in oneness. And when someone with disease gets into our presence, they feel it. They know it. They think there's something different about this person. They may think you're quirky. They may think you're weird. They may think, I don't know about this feeling when I get around this person, but they know it. And when you open it up to them, you can help them out of their disease. So what we do is we return to the sacredness of a clear heart. In oneness, we get into that flow, we get into that consciousness, into that awareness, and we go with that river, we go into the sea, we become a part of the great multitude of healing waters, that every place we set our foot is ours, and healing waters heals everything. So we return to that sacredness of heart in oneness, fed by the fires of the mind and the navel, the two fathers. Fed by the fires of the mind and the navel, bringing heaven and earth together as one, bringing the spiritual father and the earthly father together as one. The inherent spark of life is never soiled by impurity. So that earthly father that sometimes leads you into impurity can never soil that eternal person on the inside. They can never put that person into an impurity. You stay pure, you stay holy all the time. And these things that soil you, you work with that earthly father, that umbilical cord, that navel, that way that you were fed down through time. You work with that to get it to where it comes to the waters of life in the 7th chapter of John. And Jesus said, if you can get to that point to come to me for the waters of life, out of your belly shall flow rivers of living water. The earthly father will unite up with the heavenly Father, and you will become one. Two fathers, Jesus said in St. John 8, but it's really just one Father. You need to bring the one earthly Adam. First and second Adam are the same person, but you need to bring the first Adam to the second Adam. You need to bring the earthly man to the Lord from heaven. You need to become the Lord from heaven, and out of your belly, out of your navel, out of your natural feeding, out of the physical, will also flow rivers of living water. So we see this. And the inherent spark of life is never soiled by impurity. There are times the thoughts and actions may be impure. I have them sometimes. I'm sure you do. Yet the creative principle of life, the being, the spirit, that spiritual Father is ever holy. Never lose sight of that reality. You'll be okay. All those other things, you gotta work with that earthly Father. You gotta pull him into maturity. Creation is an ongoing process, and your thoughts brings winds of change. Deep within the earth are crystals, Revelations 5, Revelations 15. Deep within your earth, the earth out here, and your earth too, are crystals, and these crystals are vibrating a song. The crystal vibration, if you can get into the right frequency and create and mold those crystals to pick up the right frequencies and the right vibrations, like a radio, you tune it where you want it, it's singing song. It's singing a song says, let us plant the seeds of transformation and peace. Not the seeds of hatred and jealousy and envy and strife. It's singing a song. Let us put aside the separation of earthly and spiritual. Let's bring these two, navel and heart, mind, let's bring these to one. Recognize they're one Father. It's singing, let us reason together and come to oneness. That's what it's singing. It's all through the Scripture. Though our earthly walk is red as crimson, and it is, you can go back and find plenty of blood in my life through the past and in the present. And though our earthly walk is red as crimson, our spiritual walk is white like snow. That's what Isaiah was saying. That's what Jesus was saying. That's what the prophets said. That's what I'm saying this morning. Stop worrying about that red crimson. Stop worrying about that day you did this wrong, or you shouldn't have said that, or you prayed for that person and they weren't healed. You know, I've heard prophets say, if I stand and pray for 500 people and not one of them is healed, I'll go back tomorrow and pray for the same amount, believing that every one of them will be healed. That's what I do. And I know that whoever I've prayed for, whoever I've talked with, whoever I have broken that attribute open within them, they're going to come to their healing. I'm not worried about that. Our spiritual walk is white as snow. Without the voice of crystals, this is science. They will tell you this. You have crystals in the earth. You have crystals in the symbolics of the city, of the heavens, of everything. Without the voice of crystals coating the fine, tiny hairs of your ears, we would not even hear one another. Crystals gives us our hearing. In the church ages of Taurus, Aries, and Pisces, we look to our prophets. We look to ministers, messengers, for our communication with the Spirit. We looked for all these things to communicate to us. Ministers, messages, prophets, churches, pastors who give me a word from the Lord. Give me a word from the Lord. That's how we communicated. And we look for those things of harmony within the Spirit. In this age of Aquarius, it is incumbent to realize that it's in each one of us. Okay, it was good to see an angel messenger for the Laodicean age. That was great. It was good to see an angel messenger for Ephesus. It's good to see all of these different things outside of us. That's good to see. But this is not the age for that. This is the age where it must be incumbent in each one of us, and it is incumbent in each one of us, to hold the earthly and the spiritual harmonic crystals, to bring us to oneness, to bring us to consciousness, and communicate directly with our inner nature. That's what it's about now. I have a crystal in me. I have crystals in me. They are singing a song in me. And in me is my prophet, my minister, my leader, my everything. It's in me now. It's within us. It's my healing power. Earth's energy arises and begins to feed us through the navel at conception. Someone asked me, when, Brother Parnell, when does a baby have life? At conception or at the natural birth? The prophet said, I always get that. They ask me a question, then they try to tell me the answer. When does it? At conception or at birth? Because the prophet said that a baby has no life until it comes out of the womb and they smack it and it cries, and that's the spirit entering into it. Yeah, he did say that, but I can show you where he also said. Jesus had made that statement. He also said, I can show you where he also said to a Mormon man who was a Jack Mormon who was not living the life that they felt they should live, and he was a man that had turned to a lot of disease, and William Branham was hunting with him, and he asked him, said, are you acting Mormon? And he said, no, I'm a Jack Mormon. He said, what's that mean? He said, well, that means I have backslid. And Brother Branham said, really? He said, why did you do that? And he said, because, he said, my wife was with pregnancy, and she had a miscarriage at about 8 months, I believe he said, something like that. But anyway, he said, she had a miscarriage, and my Mormon minister told me that baby, I told him I wanted to go to heaven so I could be with my baby. And he said, your baby ain't in heaven. He said, your baby, there's no existence of that baby. It had no life in it. So he said, I just said, phooey. I don't have to be a Christian. I don't have to be a Mormon. I don't have to be any of that stuff. And Brother Branham said, he said, what do you think about that? And Brother Branham said, well, he said, I can tell you this. The Lord spoke to Jeremiah and said, I knew you when you was in the womb. And I brought you forth to the nations. So he said, the Lord seed that baby in the womb. And he said, whether that baby is there or not, is not for me to say. But you acting the way you act, you certainly aren't going to be there to find out. I thought, well, that's a pretty good answer. Listen to me. Earth's energy arises and begins to feed us through the navel at conception. Our spiritual energy arises and begins to feed us at the conception through the development of the brain. So we begin to grow immediately upon conception. The moment that seed breaks into that ovary and begins to coat that seed and put it in and form it into the womb, and it begins to take a form, it's growing. The spiritual and earthly energies unite, merging within the heart at birth. Listen to me. You want to know if a baby has life in the womb? I hope we have enough sense to know anything that's growing is alive. You take a seed, you plant it in the ground, and it begins to grow. It's alive. It's alive in the ground. Before it ever shows two blades or anything coming up, it's alive. And that baby in the womb has life at conception. And the feeding through the navel, the earthly father and mother are feeding it through the navel, and it's eating tomatoes and corn and beans and it's eating all kinds of things, and it's growing in the navel. It's alive. It's a real life. But what happens, the difference is, at birth, it becomes a soul. When it actually has a physical birth, now you become a living soul. That's what the scripture says in Genesis. The baby was alive long before. The baby was alive in the womb, and the baby was alive in theophany before it ever went to the womb. And then it comes here, if it makes it this far, it's alive through the natural birth. So we have life at conception, and that's why I say when you go out there and you commit abortion and you do those things, you are not doing a good thing. You are preventing life from coming here. And that's not a good thing. And you say, but Brother Parnell, I did it. That's okay. That's okay. That's one of those earthly things that you do. You listen to the earthly feeding and you do it. Work your way out of it and stop worrying about what you already did. Work your way out of it and just don't do those things, and don't teach other people to do those things. But let them know, hey, that baby has life at conception. It's living. It's growing in you. They take ultrasounds of it, and you watch it moving. And you watch that little heart beating. It's alive. But it becomes a living soul at its natural birth. So don't think that you're not taking a life when you destroy that baby in the womb. You are taking a life. We begin to feed at conception from the navel, and the spirit feeds through the brain. As the brain develops, the spirit is working with that little child. Okay. Now someone says to me immediately, you're telling me that the spirit works with babies in the womb. That is nonsense. Well, you just haven't read the book of Luke, where it said when the name of Jesus was spoken to Elizabeth, John was filled with the Holy Ghost and jumped in his mama's womb. Huh. So the spirit was dealing with a baby in the womb. Wake up. Realize that when things are coming to life and you just take that life, it's not a good thing. It will not play well on your conscience sooner or later. Somewhere along the line, something will say to you, geez, I wish I hadn't done that. Just don't do it. And if you've done it, stop thinking about, oh no, I'm going to hell, or I'm in hell, or just move on. And don't go back to those things. Then spiritual and earthly energies unite. Navel and spirit. Spiritual and earthly energies unite at your birth. Merging within the heart at birth. Earthly energy is the intentions in life. Earthly energy is the intentions in life. And spiritual energy is the will to accomplish those intentions in your journey and come to the enlightenment of oneness. So the earthly father feeds all of those intentions into you, and then the heavenly Father or the spiritual Father wills within it to bring those things to life within you. These energies united bring the formation of a human life, humanity. The spirit forming its body, the earth through the navel, the spirit through the mind, and the connection in the heart. These organs are symbols of the spirit. I'm not talking about my organ of the heart or my umbilical cord or my brain. I'm talking about those are symbolic organs of something real happening to you in your life. These organs are the symbols of spirit forming creation. These are the two fathers, navel and mind. These are the two fathers that Jesus spoke of in St. John 8. You're of your father the devil. You haven't yet broken the umbilical cord. You haven't yet come to awareness of being a spiritual person. That's what Jesus was saying. He wasn't accusing them of being the two fathers. He was saying your process has not brought you to your spiritual father yet. They are dual in formation, but one in maturity. So as they form, these two become one. The brain and the heart working as one in logic and feeling. This is needed to bring your being into a wholesome, holistic relationship. Healing waters. It's not a forced oneness. When you see true oneness through logic and feeling, you will discontinue rebellion against the human experiences. And that's what you do all your life. If you don't ever bring this guy down here, this belly, and this guy up here, if you don't ever bring them to oneness in the heart, then you're constantly battling the experience of humanity. This person don't like me. I invited this person to go to lunch and they said no. I asked this person to go to a party with me and they didn't. I went to work and nobody likes me. On and on and on. You are constantly battling your human experiences. Stop that. Bring the two together and realize it's a oneness in the heart. And if a person never ever touches or feels or comes to logic about your heart, that's okay. You just keep moving and you enjoy the ones that do. And the ones that don't, you say, I left a seed there. That seed will continue to tap on that ovary until it enters and they'll open up and they'll be the person they should be. So we see this working. It's not a forced oneness. But when you come to this oneness of navel and mind into the heart, when you come to it, you'll stop your rebellion. You'll discontinue all of your rebellion against all the human experiences and all the human things that are going on. You'll stop your rebellion against it. And you'll come to a oneness in thinking. We understand oneness of spirit now, and all things flow from the great spirit, the fountain of life. And we understand that God and the devil are attributes. Someone said, I pray to God. I don't pray to my attributes myself. I pray with the spirit that's in me that we will work together to bring forth my attributes. That my navel person and my mind person will come to the heart and come to oneness with one another. God and the devil are attributes, processes of our earth's journey. The spirit is energy that produces and forms these processes. You are forming these processes for you. This may help us understand a little farther. God and the devil, heaven and hell, are not entities or geographical places. These are wavelengths and frequencies. Our minds hold the crystals that connect us to these vibrations. So we hold within us the crystals, and we take those and embed them in the earth, into us, and it's the crystals that brings forth the fruit, the trees, the life, the flow of the river. It brings forth everything to have healing powers in the earth. Our mind holds these crystals, embeds them into the earthly person that connects us to these vibrations of healing. We're not fighting entities, beings, devils out here, demons out here, gods out here. We're not fighting those things. But rather we are recasting and changing the processes of our mind. Rebuilding our crystals within us to connect with different frequencies and vibrations. This is a different age, different frequency, different vibration, different walk. Herein are the principalities and powers in high places. That's what you're dealing with, those things inside you. You're the highest form. You say, where are these high places, Brother Parnell? It talks about principalities and powers in high places. Well, is it in dogs? No, they're not the highest form of life. Is it in cats? No, they're not the highest form of life. Is it in horses? No. Is it in chimpanzees? No. The highest form of life is you. And inside your mind and inside your earthly feeding, inside there is the person with the principalities, the powers of who you are, and that's who you're dealing with. The highest form of life, humanity in the earth, is the highest form of life, and you're dealing with that. And herein, inside me and inside you, are the principalities and powers in high places. We have finished many processes, frequencies, and vibrations, and gained what we need from them. Our spiritual Wi-Fi has changed. It's finished our fight on earth. We're not fighting with earth anymore. We're not. And now we have adjusted and adapted to recast. Our fight now, or our understanding now, is to adjust to the new spirit, to the mind of an angelic age. So what are you doing? You're fighting, if you're fighting anything, you're fighting off those old processes that you carried over like Jonah did and wanted to kill everybody, wanted to judge everybody, wanted everybody to smote them. And he had to change his processes over to realize that it's not that age anymore. That's why I've been writing these things. I wanted to bring us to the healing waters inside us. The revealing of the seals created these crystals. Brother Branham said to them, in questions and answers on the seals, don't worry about it. I know you didn't get what I'm talking about, but it's okay. It's like a radio with crystals. And he said the right people, the right crystals will come along that will catch this and understand it. Well, here we are. The revealing of the seals created crystals within us that have connected us to the reality of oneness in all things. The people are here that he talked about, in whom the crystals are playing the exposition of angels in transformation. We're going through the transformation from Pisces into Aquarius. The medicine wheel of life is a circle. All exists within that circle. All. Everything exists within that circle. Aubrey has the medicine in her to heal her. Don has the medicine in him to heal her, to heal me. You had the medicine in you. It's been given to you. Someone said, oh, we need to go out here and find herbs that'll heal us. That's great. It's personally better than pharma, I think. But better than herbs is find the thing in you that does away with dis-ease and let it flow. There's a third type of medicine beyond pharma and beyond herbs, and it is our spiritual being connecting with it. The medicine wheel of life is a circle. All exists within that circle. It is named life. And it's precious to enter that zero. Zero is a circle. Enter that zero in fear and begin your wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Therein is where the balance of life begins, a balance of knowledge and understanding. When you enter this zero, this circle of medicine, this medicine wheel of life that we're in right now. All young and old in the circle require love, care, and support. That little infant baby can't live on its own. It needs love and support and care to live. And the old are the same way. They get to a point they can't live on their own. They need love and support and care for them to continue to live. Herein is the building inside the circle. We're building things. Herein is the building of intimate and lasting relationships. I built intimacy with men that helped me in my career, lasting relationships. I still talk to them today. I still have good things and talk with them, and we have a good time together. I built lasting relationships in my ministry. I built it through my kids, my intimacy of my little babies with my grandkids. I built that intimacy through love, support, and care. And herein is the building of intimate and lasting relationships. The linear and circular within the circles are equalizers. Straight lines and circles. Everything's equalizers to make us or to teach us to come to all of our experiences. The linear and circular within the circle are equalizers that touch and teach all beings. Our circle is full of lines. It is. Heaven and earth. Earth and hell. Longitude and latitude. North and south. East and west. It's full of lines. And these planes send light across the spectrum of the circle. That's how light strikes that, and it doesn't bounce off. It sends light waves across the spectrum of the circle. Or it puts us in a position to gain more and more and more light and come out of our shadows. And these planes send light across the spectrum of the circle, making the light appear as linear. This gives us the feeling of beginnings and endings, which we get those feelings all the time. My career ended. I had a beginning. I can remember when I was a janitor, and I can remember when I was sitting on a board of an entire corporation. I remember all those things. They had beginnings and they had ends. The light appears as linear, and this gives us a feeling of beginnings and endings, but there is no beginning and no ending. To transform any thought or activity that hides the circle is the purpose of human beings. Let me say that one more time. To transform any thought or activity that hides the circle is the purpose of human beings, humanity. We are taking these things out of linear waves and we're bringing them into our circle. Someone said, count me out. I said, I'll just draw a bigger circle and count you back in. We are a circle of light. To transform any light, any thought or activity that hides the purpose of human beings or humanity, that is what we do. Where separation thoughts arise, and it does, they are Baptists. They are politicians. They are Methodists. They are Third Testament. Oh, they're that bunch of message folk. they're on and on and on. They are black. They are white. They are brown. They are red. All the time. Sending separation thoughts. All the time. The blacks have been here longer than the whites. The whites are more intelligent. The races are fighting back and forth. The Hispanics are this and the... Leave it all alone. It's thoughts of separations that arise in your linear movement. Take that light, and it's your purpose to transform that into the circle, to where whites, blacks, reds, yellows, all things, politicians, everything, it's all inside the circle, and it's all a part of us. Us and them is not what's going on. It is us. Reflex and recall that we are all in the circle together. There's nothing rogue. There's only us. There's not anything outside of us. Brother Clement Alunga said this, and then I'm going to close. I know it's getting late. The Bible described Peter, James, and John entering the circle of life on Transfiguration Mount. Speaking of this circle, this zero place that we entered and we're in now. Peter, James, and John entered the circle of life on Transfiguration Mount with great fear. And that's what I said. Enter this circle at your natural birth in great fear, and then wisdom begins to develop from there. If you think you didn't enter in great fear, I wish somebody would just take a video of when you're first born. How you come out so red or so black or so yellow, and you're just screaming your lungs out. And they're trying to clean you up. They're trying to get everything out of your mouth, and they're trying to get you, and they're smacking you, and they're doing everything to you, and you come out cold and shaken, and they throw a blanket around you, and you're shivering, your little chin is jumping up and down, and you're full of fear. That's the way you enter. And that fear stays in you, and it begins to bring forth wisdom. You enter with great fear. Then they stepped into the great wisdom to see and understand the coming of the Lord. Oh, look, there's Moses, there's Elijah, and there's Jesus. The resurrection, the new kingdom, they seen it all. And it's the same mystery when we enter this life by dropping from the womb of our mothers, the womb of our woman nature. The theophany enters with great fear. It does. Then begins to learn. And as it learns, it begins to see all kinds of gods and rules and regulations and Moses and Elijah and Jesus, and let's build 3 tabernacles to this one and this one and this one. And you begin to see all kinds of things in the coming of the Lord. And as you focus, you get a little better. You gain your experiences. You come to understanding of who you are. You enter with great fear, then begins to learn, to get wisdom under the leadership of Moses, Elijah, like at Transfiguration Mount. And then after a while, you know what it says. All they seen was Jesus. You come to that oneness. They begin to realize that Moses was Jesus. Elijah was Jesus. Don was Jesus. Alan was Jesus. That the natural Jesus man on the shores of Galilee is not the only guy that can say, I and my Father are one. He's not the only person that can say that as my Father works, I work hitherto. He's not the only person that can say that he is one with the Father and has understanding. He's not the only one. We're all in that same position. We reigned from the womb of the circle of the mystery cloud. We came from the mystery cloud, from the theophany realm, from the theophany civilization, the same way to seek wisdom like Eve did. Eve wasn't doing a bad thing. She came here in great fear. as she moved through the earth and through humanity, she looked around and she seen how she could produce life too. Nothing wrong with that. And she went to Adam and she said, it's obvious this is the way we're supposed to do things. And the two of them worked together and they did it, and they moved into a greater, more intimate, more loving and personal relationship than they had ever seen in all their life, and there wasn't anything bad about it. It was good. And that's what happens whenever you begin to seek wisdom in ground zero. You come to greater things. That's what the woman nature in us does. Yes. I love that, Brother Lunga. It's a strain. We all got all the way back from Elohim. That's what He is. He is continually moving out of what? Where did the pillar of fire move out of? Darkness. What was on Mount Sinai? Darkness. Where did Job say that the Spirit lives? In darkness. So this Elohim had the same desire that we had. And it was in Eve, and it was in Adam, and it's in Aubrey, and it's in Donna, and it's in every one of us, that we want all the time a more intimate, personal, loving relationship with whoever it is that we're around. It's a strain we all got way back from Elohim, which the man of wisdom, Solomon, advised, saying, my son, above all things, seek wisdom. That's what was said. And the mother of all excellent gifts of life. The giver of all excellent gifts, the circle of all excellent gifts. That's who we are. Your desires, although sometimes they may not be pure because they came from a feeding of the Father through the navel, before you put on and fed the belly with living waters from the spiritual, there may be an impurity. That's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I lied. So did Brother Branham. He said he did. In his message, Doing God a Service Without It Being His Will, he said, I was sitting there in my room or in my house, phone rang. I said, Billy, don't answer that. I don't want to answer it. He said, Billy thought, it might be somebody needing prayer or healing. Picked the phone up and said, Daddy, it's the IRS. Tell him I'm not home. And he went out. He lied. But we all do things of impurity in our life. That's okay. Know this, you're an eternal person, and there's a certain place in you, a certain atmosphere in you, a certain frequency in you that is beyond all of those impurities. And it's just using the impurities to bring it to a greater understanding. Understand that. I have a disease. That's okay. I have a way of bringing you to ease. Let me touch your heart. Let these things that I say touch your heart. Open you up. I don't have to walk in there. I don't even have to walk with you. Just open up your heart, and then you, from there on, work your healing waters within you. Say to yourself, I'm healed. This disease is not mine. It's not permanent. It's not going to manifest itself. I am better. I am moved. I am at ease. I'm not stressful. I am using the healing waters of life in me. Love bless.
I am a mountain, I am a tall tree, I am a swift wind, sweeping the country. I
is exactly what Jesus was saying about himself. And that song is exactly what he was trying to make you and all of his disciples and the whole world recognize about themselves. That's what this is about. Amen.
I am a giant, I am an eagle, I am a lion, down in the jungle. I am a marching band.